afternoon, everyone. You're listening to another podcast of Sobering Truths, where we lower the reputation of alcohol in the court of public opinion. And I'm Joyce Cook, and my co-host is Iris Stevens. And what do you got for us today, Iris?
Well, we're going to look at how, we've talked about before about how we're not trying to ban alcohol.
No.
But I thought it would be interesting because we used to have a smoking problem in this country.
Yes, we did.
Everybody smoked. My dad smoked up until I was about 6, and then he quit cold turkey, and which I thought was pretty impressive. But we had a non-smoking or an anti-smoking campaign in this country, and I am desperately trying to find that statistic. Oh, yeah. Our anti-smoking campaign over the period of years has lowered the smoking rates from 42% to 11%.
Wow.
42% in 1964 to 11% of adults today. Unfortunately, a lot of those adults in Arkansas still has a fairly high smoking rate. But if an anti-smoking campaign could do that without ever banning cigarettes, then an anti-alcohol campaign should be able to do the same thing. Because a lot of the problems are the same problems. The anti-smoking started in 1964. I think that was the year of the Surgeon General's report.
It was. On
the health damage that cigarettes caused. Because if you look at, and I know you're aware of these statistics too, before that, in the 50s, 40s, 30s, cigarettes were considered great. There wasn't a problem with those from the 20s on.
Oh, yeah.
They got the women smoking, I think, in the 20s. And, you're familiar with the movies like me. A cigarette in one hand and a martini in the other,
Exactly.
Let's think William Powell in the Thin Man series.
Right. And it solidified it in people's minds that, this is the thing to do.
Exactly, because it made you cool and cultured, and, everybody wanted to be cultured like that. So, but all this time, lung cancer rates and COPD and those kinds of illnesses were raising because the more people smoked, the more health problems we had. And
exactly.
So by the time we got to 1964, the Surgeon General came out with his report, and it showed the problems with that. And so with the problems, though, it's still 1964 was the report. They didn't pass a law until 1971 that was the Federal Cigarette Labeling and Advertising Act of 1965. It was implemented in 1971.
That's a long time.
I know.
I mean, they passed the law, but...
well, the wheels of justice grind slowly.
And I bet the tobacco companies tried to slow it down, too.
I don't know. Do tobacco companies make a lot of money?
Yeah, they make quite a bit of money.
You have any idea how much? Billions of dollars. Back then it was billions of dollars.
Just like the alcohol now.
Yeah, they fought it tooth and nail, the tobacco. But in 1971, they finally started putting the warnings on the packages of cigarettes. Cigarette smoking is dangerous to your health. Why couldn't we put that on? And it has been mentioned now to do that on alcohol. Bottles of alcohol, bottle cans, whatever. Drinking can be hazardous to your health, something in that
And they're
vein.
resisting that. And one of the reasons why you and I were just talking, it says, I've got this article here called Power, Influence, and Misinformation, Alcohol Industry Opposition to Public Health Measures. It says the global alcohol industry has been valued at well over $1 trillion.
That's with a T.
That's with a T. And that's higher than the GDP of 179 countries. Or to put it another way, it said there are only 16 countries in the world that have a higher GDP than the alcohol industry.
And we know before, basically what we've done with cigarettes in this country has in some ways decimated the tobacco companies. And so I'm sure the alcohol industry is seeing the same thing. If we let people get by with this and start banning, not banning, but even, doing what they did to tobacco, then we're going to be hurting like that too,
right.
Which would be a tragedy because of the billions of dollars of healthcare costs and other costs that we have associated with alcohol abuse and just alcohol in general. So after we had this the warning labels on cigarettes, they also did a ban on advertising of cigarettes in television and radio. That went into effect in 1970. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize it was that long ago that, but you don't see people smoking in advertisements now on television. Very rarely do you see them smoking in any kind of material, reading
Right.
material or anything. Once they took that out of right there in your face, it wasn't being glorified,
Right.
which it had been before.
Just
and
as alcohol is
yeah.
now.
And we talk about, I mentioned it wasn't being glorified. We had doctors in the 50s that recommended, I remember one particular ad that I was reading when I was doing all this. The doctors recommended Camel cigarettes. That's what he smoked. You just wonder what he died of,
Yeah.
But they actually recommended cigarettes, long before that. One way to get people to smoke that they did before all of these bans, soldiers. I remember my dad was in World War II. They put in your mess kit and whatnot, you had a couple of packs of cigarettes in there along with your gum
Right.
and your other stuff. They got women to smoking, showing how cool it was for women. And I remember when my mother, of course, my parents were quite elderly. My parents were born in 1915 and 1916, and I know my mother never smoked. She said it was vulgar for women to smoke.
Yeah.
That's what she grew up with. But by the 20s and 30s and 40s, it was considered cool and cultured for women to smoke.
I guess it was the maybe the flappers. Remember the flappers in the 20s?
Well, I don't remember them personally.
Well, I don't either. But I've heard tell.
Oh, yeah, I have too. So we just had extremely high rates of smoking then because it was positive, it was advertised, it was doctors advertised it and everything. What could go wrong? Until the Surgeon General's report. And then we started seeing this problem. And what they decided to do about it was, we have a problem. We have people dying of cigarette smoking related diseases, and it's not just the person who smokes. Sometimes it's a person who lives with a person who smokes.
Secondhand smoke.
Secondhand smoke. What they decided to do were to promote advertising strategies to stop it. And I think we have, and what I've said, the same strategies they used to stop the smoking, so much of the smoking. They didn't ban it. It's still not banned. You can still buy cigarettes if you want to pay $30 for a whatever.
Yeah.
I don't remember how much there. I had somebody tell me, I've forgotten how much it was. I thought, there ain't no way I'm going to pay that much for a carton of cigarettes. But anyway,
It's more than that, I think.
Probably.
I don't smoke and never have, but
it was something like $10 a pack, and you figure how many? I don't remember how many.
I don't
packs.
either.
But anyway, it was a ridiculous price, and it was so ridiculous I forgot it. But what they started to do was to use these same promotions to stop the tobacco that we could use to stop the alcohol.
It's a pattern. It's a pattern.
It's a pattern.
A well, not a well-worn, but I guess a proven.
Yes.
A
yes.
proven way to do that.
Yes. And of course, they've done the same thing to promote alcohol as they did to promote tobacco. You show people having all sorts of fun that you obviously can't have without alcohol. We get the women to drink.
Yes, they started that too. And women, it affects women more drinking because their bodies are smaller.
Yes. And probably a lot of other things too, hormonally and things like
Yeah.
that. And of course, women are the ones who have babies, so women really shouldn't be drinking either before or obviously during
Right.
a pregnancy. But these were they did basically 5 ways to stop the smoking without banning it. First, they documented how dangerous smoking was. In the 1986 Surgeon General's report, it talked about health rates associated with smoking, and it started a whole flood of clean indoor air legislation. Mm-hmm. Then second, in 1888, the Surgeon General's report documented tobacco use as an addiction. So they showed people that once you start smoking, you become addicted to this.
Just like alcohol.
Just like
and
alcohol.
what was the first one you said about?
First one was in health risks with indoor smoking and clean air legislation. That one may not, but I tell you what would be the health risks with people who drink and then drive.
And that's what I was going to say, or drink while they're pregnant.
Yes.
Or drink themselves, like women we were talking about, breast cancer.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
That's
because
very...
It's amazing the similarity between the cancers from tobacco and the cancers from alcohol. I'm going to talk about that just in a minute. So what they did, the second way they did was they talked about how tobacco was not just something fun, it became addictive. And then it was so difficult to stop. You became really drug dependent on
They
the
probably
nicotine.
knew that.
Oh, I'm sure they did. That's what kept people smoking. You get them started smoking,
Yeah.
they're going to continue.
And they
Same
get
thing.
killed off from their product, and they've got to get younger people
Yeah, you
to
get-
replace it.
And think about this: you get people started drinking, you get a lot more people. It's so weird, this similarities. I hadn't thought about it.
It really
until
is.
we started these podcasts, and I thought, wait a minute. I started looking at similarities. Number third, public policies. What they did was they implemented cigarette excise tax increases. They made it more expensive. The clean indoor air laws and the efforts to prevent adolescents from purchasing tobacco and starting to smoke, that cut down on the smoking. You know, the more expensive you made it, the less people smoked. And we see that now. Whereas only 11% of adults smoke now compared to 42% in, say, 1964. So that's a plan that we could do. You make it more expensive to drink alcohol. I don't drink. I don't like the taste of it. I know what it does to people, so I'm not, I don't like it. But I've never considered the expense of it because since I don't buy it, I don't know how much it is. But I should have done some research on that.
With somebody, a lot of the lower income people, they target them, and they don't have the money to do that.
Right? They don't have the money to smoke either, and they're
No.
also targeting. And there are groups that have stopped smoking except for certain groups, and I don't think I put those in here, but a lot of your groups that smoke are the ones who are economically disadvantaged, and then it lists several others that I was surprised about. Fourth was the litigation, the lawsuits by private individuals, the states, and the U.S. Department of Justice, which pressured the tobacco industry because when you sue them for billions of dollars, they think twice about implementing some of these changes. The Master Settlement Agreement in 1998 mandated that the tobacco industry pay the states a total of $246 billion over 25 years, and the DOJ verdict in 2006 found the industry guilty of racketeering. Those were two victories.
Yeah, the RICO law, saw that.
Yes. And when you consider, I don't know if you do, I remember the tobacco money, the tobacco
I do.
lawsuits coming to the states, and they wanted to pay this and that. Those suits were primarily to help people who were injured, who were had developed cancer or whatever. Some of that money was supposed to help them. Some of it was stop smoking, cessation products and
Right.
stuff like that. So, and then fifth, involved the tobacco cessation. They found out that if you work with people and trying to get them help to quit, it worked. So all of those were effective in stopping the smoking. Look how many of them would be appropriate in helping stop the alcohol.
Exactly.
People are doing this plan could have worked wonderfully. So, long-term smoking rates have fallen 86% above from youth. We're not having as many youth starting to smoke as what we did before. Usually it was a rite of passage by 16. You're not old enough to remember this, but I can remember when I was a kid, guys would wear their cigarettes rolled up in their
Yeah.
T-shirts. And so that was, schools actually had smoking areas at that time.
I've heard about that.
Now, if you get caught smoking, you get suspended. So we have totally changed our opinion on that. And I wanted to get into what the effects are. Smoking created or killed approximately 500,000 people prematurely each year from diseases directly responsible. But guess what? Excessive alcohol, is responsible for 178,000 deaths in the United States every year. And that's only a limited number right there. There are other, but it wasn't a direct
Yeah.
study there. A study shows that heavy drinkers die 13 years earlier than those who have never drunk. And by the way, how much do you think a heavy drinker, how many drinks would that be?
Well, no amount of alcohol is safe.
Right, but what would classify a heavy drinker? I used to think it was probably a bottle of whiskey a week or something like that. It's 8 drinks a week.
Oh, okay.
And that's the specific drinks are identified in the study
Right.
as how much alcohol. But it says those who consume 8 or more alcoholic drinks per week are considered heavy drinkers.
Wow.
And they die 13 years earlier than those who have never been a drinker.
And sometimes you can look at someone and they've got that look that they're a heavy drinker.
Yeah.
They don't look healthy.
Yeah. Smoking kills people 13 years sooner. to me, it was just amazing the correlation that we saw here, the
Right.
comparison that we saw here. 13 years for alcohol, 13 years for drinking. I wonder if it's 26 years for people who do both. I'm not joking about it,
It
but
could be. I read an article, I think we talked about it before, that I can't remember which one, alcohol or cigarettes, one of them boosts the bad effects of the other.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
can see that as a kid. Well, as a probably before I became a teenager, somewhere around there, 12, 13, it used to puzzle me on how people could drink and smoke at the same time. I kept thinking they'd explode,
Yeah.
because alcohol is but then I was kind of a curious kid. So anyway, tobacco cost almost 200 billion annually and added health care and lost productivity costs. Phooey, where do I have that? Oh, excessive alcohol costs the U.S. economy 249 billion a year.
So more.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's so close.
Yeah, it's very
and
similar.
Yeah, and it's not just in the health costs, but it's lost productivity. People who can't show up for work Monday morning because they got tied over on the weekend. So we've got that. We've got that problem. Smoking is linked to at least 16 different types of cancer: lung cancer, mouth cancer, throat cancer, esophageal cancer, bladder cancer, kidney cancer, pancreatic cancer, stomach cancer, cervical cancer, liver cancer, colon and rectal cancer, and acute myeloid leukemia, which I was really surprised about. I didn't really expect that.
Yeah.
Those are all the different kinds of cancer that tobacco smoke is, responsible for. But the cancers from alcohol, mouth, throat, pharynx, voice box, esophagus, colon and rectum, liver, breast in women, and then also prostate cancer. They say that some studies show that drinking 3 or more drinks that contain alcohol per day increases the risk of stomach and pancreatic cancers too.
I wouldn't doubt it.
So you've got the similarity between smoking and drinking here, and all of those create costs for all of us. It's not just costs for the people. When you have
The people that drink. It's not just.
and the people that smoke.
Yeah.
Because we're paying those costs in elevated medical care costs, elevated insurance costs, and of course, with alcohol, we pay in more ways than that. We pay when people who drink and then get in their cars and wipe out another family. We've mentioned several
Yeah.
instances here just lately of that. That has
Higher
cost.
insurance.
Yes, higher insurance, because look at the insurance you're going to pay, not just insurance and cars destroyed, but insurance taking care of the people who were hit, if they're capable of being taken care of.
Right.
It is just downhill all the way. Whereas tobacco, in some ways, is not that bad because, as I've said before on here, you don't smoke 2 packs of cigarettes and go out and wipe somebody out in a car. That's not, but you can. When you're smoking, you drink a couple of drinks and whatever, you can do that.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Kill yourself and
Yes.
others.
Yes. So what did you had a couple of things you wanted to say about that, about, the smoking and the drinking.
Well, they both industries. I was reading this article. It says misinformation is an industry tactic, just like the tobacco industry. They'll take studies and twist them,
Yes.
and they want to protect their health harming product. Is
Well,
what
of course,
they want to
because
do.
it's worth $1 trillion and probably that much with the alcohol or with the tobacco and the alcohol. It used to be tobacco.
Right. And it says, commenting on big alcohol's tactics, the WHO, that's World Health Organization, said there was evidence of a concerted effort by industry to denigrate well-established scientific findings that alcohol causes cancer and liver disease.
That's
Is
incredible.
that surprising?
It's not surprising, but it's incredible to me that thinking people would believe that. When I was doing this research, I told Bob earlier, I found, I don't know how many references. I don't consider them legitimate because when you look back at the URLs, you can trace the URLs to where you shouldn't be able to. They were associated with liquor industry or whatever. They were actually claiming that people who drink live longer than people who don't drink. And you think, how could anybody be dumb enough to believe that? I'm sorry, the word is dumb. How could anybody be dumb enough to believe that? But that's what they try to do. They try to convince people who are prone to want to drink that there will not be any
Right.
consequences. And of course, one of the studies that came out of the WHO that you just mentioned was that there is no safe limit. There
Right.
is no safe amount of alcohol. It's a neurotoxin. And there have been some really concerning studies about what alcohol, even small amounts of alcohol, do to your brain,
Yes.
causing dementia and things. And I think probably that's an area that concerns a huge number of people. We know we're all going to age and things, but most of us don't want dementia. Anybody who's had a relative had dementia or see the effects, we do just about anything to avoid that.
Right.
And alcohol, they're finding, has a significant effect on people in the future, with dementia.
And young people too. Young people,
Yeah.
it affects them because they're, especially the women, because they're smaller.
Yeah.
They're more prone to getting affected by it. And then, okay, let's see. It says, nevertheless, such approaches are in keeping with the industry globally, where big alcohol has consistently attempted to downplay the health risk of alcohol, particularly concerning cancer. See, they don't want that to get out.
No, but the thing about it is they can't help it because we have these medical studies, and most of what I pull out, like the statistics and things that I pulled out, came from the NCBI and the NLM and the NIH, National Institute of Health. So we're talking about legitimate health studies where they've actually looked at groups of people, compared and contrast the health situation with those who drink versus those who don't drink.
Right.
And of course, some of the rest of this we pulled out from the history. We pulled out, and that's available to everybody, the history of alcohol and the history of smoking. So these are legitimate studies. You can dislike them all you want to, but it's kind of saying you don't like the fact the sun comes up in the east. It doesn't make any difference whether you like it. It's a fact.
Right.
And this is a fact that we have significant health problems. But I wanted to concentrate today on the fact that how we got rid of so much smoking can be done for getting rid of the amount of alcohol that we have without banning anything.
Yeah.
You make it unpopular, but it's going to take legislation. It's going to take what happened up here, and we already know that the negative effects, medically. Why are we not having some major legislation like came out after the Surgeon General's report? Now we did, not too long ago, I did hear that they were talking about, the Surgeon General's office. They were talking about the warnings. Putting warnings on bottles of alcohol or cans or whatever, source that you get them from.
Right.
Maybe that's a start. But all they have to do is use the tobacco plan to go by, and it would keep people from wanting to drink as much, the same way that we keep people from wanting to smoke.
It would let people have their autonomy, their freedom, and let them make the decision for it. And for their kids, some people just say, think that their kids can drink, and I'd rather them drink in front of me than some silly nonsense like that.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
And some other instances too, which were just as stupid.
Yeah, it's not very bright, in my opinion.
No, I always think of things like arsenic. I want my children to take arsenic in front of me instead of out there on the street.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's the same thing. Arsenic is a poison. Alcohol is a poison. It's a neurotoxin. It's a liver toxin. It's all of these. And so I don't think anybody ought to be supporting it. But at least, like we said, this would allow people the autonomy. You've got this information out instead of allowing a $1 trillion industry to be determining who drinks, how we drink, and basically lying about a lot of this, putting a lot of false information out, and keeping their advertising in front of everybody's faces.
Right.
The one I think about is the one at Christmas, and I don't know what it's for. I think it's for a Mexican beer, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
The one where the little palm tree is all decorated in Christmas lights, and it's got nice music, and then the one that breaks my heart is the Clydesdales, because I love horses and I love those Clydesdales.
I do too.
But anyway, I think, what they're pulling is basically a toxin.
Yeah.
Alcohol is a toxin. And so if we weren't allowing that in our right in front of our eyes, and our advertising, magazines, TV, radio, it's not right in front of us. And things that are not right in front of us, we don't pay that much attention to.
Right. And I just always go back to the children because I was a child of an alcoholic, and I cannot even bear to think of children going through things like that, having to deal with an alcoholic parent.
Well, anyway, what I wanted to do today was to put a plan out there that we could use, this country could use, to lessen the amount of alcohol without turning anybody's faucet off.
Sounds like a good plan.
Well, I was surprised when I found it. I just thought it went for tobacco and was successful. The same plan could be used for alcohol and be successful.
I thought the same thing when I'd read some articles before when I was doing research. And what I was going to say about, the what I just said about them, big alcohol consistently attempting to downplay the health risks, particularly with cancer. Said, for instance, when the WHO called for cigarette-style cancer warnings on alcohol packaging, a move supported by cancer charities, the alcohol industry opposed this, arguing that such warnings are unfair and could create unnecessary anxiety. But like you said, those reports were, out of the National Institutes of Health. They weren't studies that were from wackadoodles.
Exactly. So, I don't know where we'll go from this. I think it's important for all of us to understand what the truth really is. And I think about these people that really, really want alcohol. They laugh at what we're doing. They don't care about what we're doing or anything. And I think about that, and I think, well, sometime it will be something that they care about. You know, that people care about it at different levels. And I've seen the problems. The older you get, the more the problems you see. Mm-hmm. And I just see that I would prefer to do things like this that don't impinge on people's freedom.
Yes.
But yet don't push it right in our faces, encourage everybody to do it. And we're fighting against $1 trillion industry with this.
It's a Goliath. We're fighting Goliath.
Yes,
We're little Davids.
Yeah, little David's fighting Goliath. So,
like we said, our tagline is lowering the reputation of alcohol in the court of public opinion.
Yes.
So that's what we're aiming at. And I would love for some public health announcements to come on for movie stars, that have influence.
I remember the tobacco industry did that, at one point. The guy that played Perry Mason's Hannibal, no, it was Hannibal. It was,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hamilton Burger.
Hamilton Burger came on. I was at Memphis and May celebration, and I walked by, and this was TV, and he was giving an impassioned plea for people not to smoke because he was currently dying from lung cancer.
Right.
And we need to see that because, we see the people with the trach tube and, on television. That's for tobacco.
Yeah.
We need the same thing for alcohol.
We do. And
we're not getting it.
We're not getting it. And that would be good. Instead of them glamorizing it, it needs to be, what's the opposite of glamorize?
Condemned.
Condemned. But
at least it doesn't need to be promoted the way it is. And it doesn't need to be a rite of passage for a lot of teenagers because that's what it is.
I know. Well, folks, I guess we're going to try to wrap it up here. And we're hoping in the next couple weeks to have a guest. And so you'll want to be watching and checking in. And would you do us a favor? Would you make some comments down below? Maybe some shows you want to see, some subjects you want to hear about.
And what you think? What do you
think?
Yeah,
what you think? Are we doing good? What do you think? But we are just pleased that you're here. And
don't forget our little booklet.
Yes. You can get this free if you call in. Number's 870-910-0464.